Right, g'day, how you going? In this video, I'm going to try to talk about cable selection, but also how the tables work. I've just done a little video on how the D rating tables apply. This one I'm going to try to walk through how to read the reference tables at the front, 3.1, 3.2 and 3.4, and how they apply and give you a guide out to the other tables. So if we go to table in the back of the book called Appendix B, list of tables, we'll have a look at that first and then I'll explain and break that down, because that's the most important part where you're going to highlight. It's like your reference point for the whole book. If you highlight that up and break it down, it'll give you the guide to where to go for the rest of the book. So if we have a look at it, we've got table 1 talking about limiting temperatures of cables. That table applies in as3008 as well. It's in this one as well. If you've got a question and it says HLT 110 or X90 or V90 and you're going to go, I don't understand what temperature rating that is, you go to table 1. What it does is in the normal column it'll explain, or you look for that combination of what it's written as, and it'll give you the temperature rating of the cable. Most important, because when we're looking up tables, there's 3 ratings we're looking for: 75, 90 and 110. If I don't have the right rating, I won't be going to the right table, and that makes a very big difference. All right, table 3.1 to 3.4 are not tables that give you values. They're a guide table. They have descriptions on it. They have the type of cable and how it's installed. They have 4 different types of tables. We're going to go through that. They are a guide between tables 4 to 15. All right, and I'll explain how those tables break up. All right, tables 18 and 19 on Appendix B are for flame-proof only. So your MIMS cable, flame-proof stuff, they're not made any reference on tables 3.1 to 3.4 at all. They apply that you need to know whether on tables 18 and 19. And then tables 22 to 26, when we have more than one cable. So when we go to tables 3.1 to 3.4, the very last column, that applies to these tables 22 to 26. And they talk about if I've got 2 cables together or 3 cables in the ground and they're spaced so far apart or how they're touching, those D rating tables apply to that. Anyway, I'll talk about that more when I get and we have a look at that page. Okay, so let's have a look. 3.1, it says unenclosed in air. That means that if the cable's clipped or a catenary, it applies to that. It has no conduit, so it's just a cable on its own, clipped to a wall or in a catenary. It might be tied up in an air. That's what they call unenclosed in air. Enclosed, that is basically any type of conduit that is running above the ground in an enclosed conduit. So that could be a conduit clipped along a wall, could be on a timber, it doesn't matter, inside a shed, all right, but it is above the ground. So the first 2 tables are talking about anything above the ground, unenclosed and enclosed, and that can be for SDIs or it could be for a multi-core cable on both of those tables. Table 3.3 talks about buried direct in the ground. Most of my experience in industrial and laying heavy cables was burying what they call armoured cables, but you still can bury a cable directly in the ground. All right, so this, if it says buried directly in the ground in a question, this is where you would be looking for below the ground. All right, it doesn't automatically apply a D rating for depth of laying. That you have to have a look for on 28 1 or 2, and that talks about if the depth is more than half a metre deep, that's where you would go for those tables 28 1 or 2, depending if it's buried direct in the ground. But 28 1 is buried direct in the ground, so if it's more than half a metre in the ground, you would have to apply that. And then another D rating would be if you have more than 2 cables, you would apply another D rating. All right, now 23.4 is buried underground wiring enclosures. So that means that for the cables inside a conduit, this applies for this below ground inside a conduit. So that's the other one. Is 28.2 talks about underground wiring enclosures as well, single core or multi-core. I talked about that in the other video. Depth of laying, if it's more than half a metre in the ground or shorter, so minimum is half a metre anyway, but if it's more than that down in the ground, you would have to then apply a D rating. And if you have more than one cable, you would then also use any of the tables between 22 to 26. All right. Look, there's a lot going on in cable selection because you've got a lot of things that can take into variations. Cables touching. So the crutch of cable selection together is the dissipation of heat. The more we can dissipate the heat off the cable, the more we can get out of the cable. The more heat we store in the cable, all right, the more that we get less current out of it. Okay, so that's how these tables will work across the board. So cables laying on cable trays, and you've got 3 or 4 layers of cable trays above each other. They will apply D ratings under a ceiling, like a concrete car park, where the heat rises and it's heating up against the ceiling. Also in thermal resistivity, thermal stuff like insulation, all that type of stuff. So at the end of the day, all these tables apply around us dissipating the heat out of the cable. All right. Now, if you look at the tables too, if we go down from table 4 to table 15, the tables actually start. So table 4 is 75 degrees, then table 5 is 90 degrees, table 6 110, and they follow that order again. They go back 75, 90, 110, 75, 90, 110, all the way to table 15. Now, if we go to the front of the book and have a look at the actual tables itself, table 3132, which I'm going to turn to now. If we open it up, I'm going to open up table 31 for a start, and then just have a basic description of that. You'll see that the first column is called item number, so that goes down through what we're talking about. Column 2 talks about cable details. So we have 2 different ways cables are run, either in single core or multi-core. All right. So they'll either say 2 single core cables, 3 single core cables, and the way we do cable selection, the current carrying capacity of the cable is measured by active and neutral carrying the full current, or 3-phase red, white, blue carrying the full current. We don't include the neutral or the neutral or the earth, because they only carry a portion of the current. We look at the values of the full current carrying capacity. So then we go up to 2 core or 3 core. So as I said to you, there's 2 ways you look at it: 2 single core, 3 single core, 2 core, and 3 core. Okay, and then your descriptions will change across that as you go. All right. So as we go across the pages, we have 2 core and 3 core. Now, if you have a look at the item column 4, right, it also has tables. So example, there'll be the first 2 tables. So for example, I'm looking at 2 single core cables, table 4, table 5. All right. So table 4, the first table, is 75 degrees. The second table, right, which is table 5 here, is 90 degrees, and the one down the bottom, table 6, is 110. And it applies to all of those item numbers as we go down through the thing, through the list. The first table is 75, second table is 90 degrees, the third one is 110. But below each table numbers, it's got columns 2 to 4. The first number, or the first number column they talk about, is usually copper, then following by aluminium. Okay, and that'll be the same too on the third table as well. The first column being column number they talk about will be copper, and then go into aluminium. All right. The next column is called column 5. Talks about methods of insulation. Now, things like open troughing, closed troughing, all right, a suspended cable. Suspended cables like a catenary, they actually have a separate item number. So for example, in table 131, we have item 3 and item 6. And what they do is they have a separate table for regards to D rating, but they do apply in those things because suspended from a catenary cable. Now, if you're looking in column 6, that talks about D rating table for more than one cable. Used to say that in the old wiring rule book, but they actually took out the word for more than one cable out, and it's just called D rating table. So item 6 mostly applies between 20 for the tables of 22 to 26, and what that'll do is that'll automatically take you to that D rating table. It doesn't include, like I said before, when we talked about tables 27.12, 28.12, and 29, they're all different. They don't apply into these 4 areas. You need to know how to apply them yourself. Okay, So if you have a look at the D rating tables, 23, say for example in this area, or table 22, they all take you out to those areas there, and you go from that point there. So as I said to you, there is different areas. If we go into table 3.2 and have a bit of a look at that now, it talks about about insulation. Now you've got to remember there's a different way of how we look at insulation and stuff like that. It's either fully enclosed or partially enclosed. Partially enclosed means it could be on the side of a timber and clipped to a side of a timber, and we only have 3 sides that are enclosed with insulation. Fully enclosed means that the cable has a full 360 degrees insulation around it. The other way I talk, so I basically look at it like a box. 3 sides for a cable 3 sides enclosed if it's up against a piece of timber or material. All right, 4 sides if it's fully enclosed all the way around. Okay, you need to make sure you understand what that is, and being enclosed and unenclosed. The biggest thing for you to do, the only way you learn how to use tables is actually going through all the questions and applying them through. But hopefully I've given you a few little tips. The more you do it, the much easier it is to work with. But the main thing is reading the question and taking out the critical bits of information. Do I need to look at the depth of laying? Is that 1/2 metre in the ground? Okay, if that's 1/2 metre, don't have to worry about it. It's D rating a 1. Soil resistivity, 1.2. Yep, okay, that's okay. I don't need to worry about that. It's a D rating of 1. But get used to looking up where the tables are for where they are as well, because if you do get that question where it doesn't match this D rating of 1, you'll need to apply that D rating. When you do set out cable selection, right, in questions like that, you need to set it out in a format where people can follow it. The first thing I always write down is the table number, all right, the temperature it was rated at, and then the current value of what that was rated at. So I might go table 14, column 2, all right, or sorry, table 14 at 45 degrees equals 120 amps, all right. When you're also doing D ratings as well for cables touching and set apart, say 450 degrees apart, don't forget to set it out in 2 different formats, which means is do the touching and then do the space down the bottom and apply the 2 different D ratings that are applying on there, and the table number. Cable selection, like it says when you're reading the exam papers and all that, all calculations and tables must be shown to obtain full marks. It's in bold lettering. It's on nearly every bloody question. And I still get guys not putting down volts or amps, or not putting down D ratings or putting down tables, and they wonder why they might only get, a quarter of the marks for it, because they've left out all the vital information. I need to be able to follow that listing of working out and tell me where you got all that information from. Okay, I'm going to try to go through a worked example in another video and work it down and try to explain it. But most of these little videos I'm doing at the moment is for you just to understand how to use the tables.